greatest engineering undertakings in the history.
Freedom came under attack.
My name is Jason Bruner, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies at Arizona State University. This video is a brief introduction to the Rwandan genocide and the online research project we're inviting you to join. At 8:30 p.m. on April 6, 1994, a jet carrying Juvenal Habyarimana, the president of Rwanda, and Cyprien Ntaryamira, president of Burundi, was shot down as it was landing in Kigali, Rwanda, in Central Africa. Within hours of the assassination of President Habyarimana, who was a Hutu, targeted killings of prominent moderate Hutu politicians had begun in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. Within 24 hours, roadblocks were established around Kigali, and Belgium, France, and the United States began a coordinated airlift campaign to remove Western citizens, leaving ordinary Rwandans behind. Within 2 weeks, all embassies had closed and humanitarian organizations had fled. 3 weeks after the plane was shot down, Pope John Paul II described what was happening in Rwanda as genocide. When the most intense violence stopped, about 100 days after the presidential plane was shot down, nearly 1 million Rwandans, mostly Tutsis but also moderate Hutus, had been killed. That averages out to approximately 7 murders every minute around the clock for 100 days straight, in a country roughly the size of the U.S. state of Maryland. 3 million Rwandans became refugees as a result of the genocide, and an additional 2 million were internally displaced within Rwanda. However, those who fled the genocide into Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, and what was then Zaire were faced with new threats of violence and retaliation. The legacy of this violence has continued up to the present, contributing to the ongoing conflicts in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Like often happens in the wake of a mass atrocity, there are questions raised. How could this happen? Why did the genocide occur when it occurred? Was the genocide simply an outburst of spontaneous anger and hatred, or was it orchestrated and planned? Who was responsible and who was to blame? Some looked to the colonial legacy left by the Belgians. Some pointed fingers at radical Hutus, others at Tutsis. Others wondered if Christian churches were in some way to blame for the genocide. Because why, in a country that was 90% Christian, was a common faith and common church not enough to prevent this kind of violence? So how are we to understand this genocide, historically, politically, legally, and even religiously? Historians have looked at precursors to the genocide and the Hutu revolution of the late 1950s and early 1960s, or the violence that erupted again in 1972, leaving tens of thousands dead. Politically, some wondered if the '94 genocide might be, or at least began as, a response to the possibility of a coup. Might this have been simply part of a civil war? Legally, how ought a nation hold perpetrators responsible, especially since they were so widely distributed throughout the population? Or even theologically, as many have wondered, where was God in the midst of the terror and killing? For this project, however, we want you to encounter the testimonies, memories, and stories of the survivors. We want you to hear them in their own words and learn about the genocide through their intimate and personal accounts of it. To learn something of what it was like to live in the midst of the bewildering events of the summer of 1994, and also what it has been like to survive and reflect on what happened to them, to their family and friends, and to their country. As you read, watch, or listen to the various testimonies, think about how the person's account is unique. What are they telling you about themselves, about the genocide, about its aftermath, that you had not heard before? This could be as simple as a word or a phrase that they use to describe an incident, like, "the angels have left us." Or it could be a new perspective on why the genocide occurred at all. Pay attention to what the person wants to highlight about their experiences. What is most important in their story of the genocide? As you listen to multiple testimonies, you may begin to notice patterns and similarities in what they are saying. Still, I hope you will approach each testimony with the openness, respect, and care that it deserves. And thank you for joining us in this important research project.